The Vanishing Justice Opening Hook, October 15th, 1998. 11:47 p.m. A federal judge walks out of an upscale restaurant into a misty night. Security cameras capture him getting into his car. The engine starts, headlights flicker on. Then, nothing. The car is found 3 hours later, engine still running, driver's door wide open. His briefcase sits on the passenger seat, perfectly arranged. His phone shows 14 missed calls, but the judge? Gone. Vanished into thin air. For 27 years, his disappearance remains one of America's greatest unsolved mysteries. The FBI closes the case. The media moves on. His family is left with nothing but questions and a haunting silence. Until his son discovers something in his father's old files. A single photograph that changes everything. A photograph that reveals the judge didn't disappear by accident. He was erased, systematically, deliberately, by people operating at the highest levels of American power. This isn't a story about a missing person. This is a story about what happens when you threaten the most dangerous organization in America. One that hides behind courtrooms, congressional offices, and the very institutions meant to protect us. Before we begin, hit subscribe, because what you're about to hear will make you question everything you thought you knew about justice in America. Part 1. The Last Supper, Riverside, Connecticut, October 15th, 1998. The rain had stopped an hour before sunset, leaving the streets slick and reflective under the amber glow of streetlights. At precisely 7:30 p.m., Federal Judge Richard Calloway stepped out of his silver Mercedes in front of Le Bernardin, an exclusive French restaurant frequented by lawyers, politicians, and those who preferred their conversations off the record. Richard was 56 years old, tall, broad-shouldered, with silver hair, and the kind of commanding presence that made people straighten their posture when he entered a room. He'd served on the federal bench for 18 years, presiding over some of the most controversial cases in Connecticut's history: organized crime trials, political corruption cases, corporate fraud scandals. He was known for two things: his meticulous attention to detail and his absolute refusal to be influenced by anyone. That night, he was meeting someone he'd known for over a decade, Marcus Chen, a federal prosecutor who'd worked under him early in his career. Marcus had called 3 days earlier, saying he needed to discuss something urgent, something he couldn't talk about over the phone or in any official capacity. Richard arrived first. He ordered scotch, single malt, neat, and waited. Marcus arrived 15 minutes late, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. His normally crisp suit was wrinkled. His tie was loosened. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. "You look like hell," Richard said as Marcus slid into the booth across from him. "I haven't slept in 4 days," Marcus replied, glancing around nervously. "We need to talk about the Dominion case." Richard's expression hardened. The Dominion case, officially titled United States versus Dominion Financial Group, was the largest financial fraud prosecution in New England history. Dominion had been accused of laundering over $800 million through shell companies, bribing federal officials, and manipulating congressional votes on banking regulations. Richard had presided over the trial for 9 months. The verdict had been delivered 3 weeks earlier, guilty on all counts. The CEO, Victor Harrington, was facing 60 years in federal prison. "What about it?" Richard asked carefully. Marcus leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "The evidence we used to convict Harrington? Half of it was fabricated." Richard went very still. "I'm sorry?" His voice was dangerously quiet. "The wire transfers we traced back to his personal accounts? Planted? The testimony from the CFO? Coerced? The documents showing congressional bribes? Manufactured?" Marcus's hands were shaking. Someone wanted Harrington convicted, regardless of the actual evidence. "Who?" Richard demanded. Marcus's eyes darted around the restaurant again. "I don't know all the players, but I know it goes high. Department of Justice, maybe higher. When I started asking questions, I was told to shut up and forget what I'd seen. When I kept pushing, I was threatened." He pulled a manila envelope from his jacket and slid it across the table. I made copies of everything I could find. The real financial records. Communications between DOJ officials discussing the fabrication. Names of people involved. Richard opened the envelope slightly, glancing at the documents inside. His jaw tightened. "If this is true," he said slowly, "we convicted an innocent man, and we did it using manufactured evidence in a federal trial. Do you understand what that means?" "It means the entire system is compromised," Marcus said. "And it means you're in danger. They know you're meticulous. They know you review everything after a trial concludes. It's only a matter of time before you discover the discrepancies on your own." Richard closed the envelope. "What do they want?" "I don't know, but Judge—" Marcus's voice cracked slightly. "Victor Harrington wasn't the target. He was a pawn. Someone needed him out of the way, and they used our justice system to do it." They talked for another hour. Marcus revealed everything he'd discovered. The network of officials involved, the timeline of fabrication, the motivation he suspected but couldn't prove. By the time they finished, it was nearly 10 p.m. As they prepared to leave, Marcus grabbed Richard's arm. "Be careful," he said urgently. "I mean it. These people, they don't play by rules. If they think you're going to expose this, they'll—" "They'll what?" Richard interrupted. "I'm a federal judge, Marcus. I'm not afraid of threats." "You should be," Marcus said quietly, "because I've seen what they do to people who get in their way, and it's not pretty." They parted outside the restaurant. Marcus got into a waiting taxi. Richard stood on the sidewalk for a moment, the manila envelope tucked under his arm, rain beginning to fall again in a light mist. Security footage from Le Bernardin shows Richard walking to his Mercedes at 10:52 p.m. He opens the door, places the envelope on the passenger seat, and gets in. The car's headlights turn on. The timestamp reads 10:53 p.m. when his car pulls out of the parking space. By 10:57 p.m., the security camera at the intersection of Harbor Street and Collins Avenue captures his Mercedes passing through, the last confirmed sighting of Richard Calloway before he vanished. At 2:15 a.m., a police officer on routine patrol found Richard's Mercedes idling in an empty parking lot near the waterfront. The driver's door was open. The engine was still running. The headlights were on. The manila envelope was gone. Richard Calloway had disappeared without a trace. Part 2. The investigation that wasn't the next morning. Richard's wife, Catherine Calloway, called 911 at 6:47 a.m. after her husband never came home. "He's never late," she told the dispatcher, her voice tight with controlled panic. "Not once in 32 years of marriage. Something's wrong." The police arrived at the Calloway residence within 20 minutes. Catherine showed them Richard's study. Everything was in perfect order. His reading glasses sat on his desk. His legal briefs were neatly stacked. His calendar showed no unusual appointments. By noon, the FBI had been called in. This wasn't just a missing person. This was a federal judge who disappeared hours after handling sensitive documents related to a major corruption case. Special Agent Laura Mitchell led the investigation. She was thorough, experienced, and immediately suspicious of the circumstances. His car was found running, she noted during the first briefing. Door open, no signs of struggle, but his briefcase and phone were inside, undisturbed. Either he got out willingly, or someone made it look that way. The FBI interviewed everyone Richard had contact with in the days before his disappearance. Colleagues, court staff, lawyers who'd appeared before him. Catherine was questioned for hours about her husband's state of mind, any unusual behavior, financial problems, affairs. "Nothing," she insisted. "Richard was the most stable, predictable man I've ever known. He didn't gamble. He didn't cheat. He barely drank. His entire life was the law." When investigators questioned Marcus Chen about their dinner meeting, his testimony was oddly vague. "We discussed old cases," Marcus said. "Reminisced about our early days working together. Nothing unusual." "Did Judge Calloway seem worried about anything?" Agent Mitchell pressed. "No more than usual. He always took his work seriously." "Did he mention any threats? Anyone who might want to harm him?" "No." But security footage from Le Bernardin told a different story. The body language between the two men was tense. Marcus kept looking around nervously. And when Richard left, he was carrying something, a manila envelope, that wasn't found in his car. When confronted with this discrepancy, Marcus hesitated. "He did give me some documents," he finally admitted. "Old case files he wanted me to review. Nothing important." "Where are those documents now?" I don't remember. I think I threw them away." Agent Mitchell made a note. Marcus Chen, not telling the whole truth. 3 weeks into the investigation, the FBI made a disturbing discovery. Richard's office computer had been accessed remotely the night of his disappearance, at 11:43 p.m., while his car was already found abandoned. Someone had logged into his system, using his credentials, and deleted multiple files. The IT forensic team recovered fragments, case notes on the Dominion trial, private memos about discrepancies in evidence, draft letters to the Attorney General requesting an investigation. "He knew something," Agent Mitchell told her team, "and someone wanted to make sure that knowledge disappeared with him." But then, just as the investigation was gaining momentum, it hit a wall. Agent Mitchell was pulled from the case without explanation. Her replacement, Agent Robert Hoffman, took a different approach. "We're looking at this wrong," Hoffman announced in his first briefing. "Judge Calloway was under immense stress. High-profile cases, public scrutiny. It's possible he chose to disappear. A breakdown, a need to escape." The team exchanged skeptical glances. "With all due respect," one agent spoke up, "the evidence doesn't support voluntary disappearance. His finances are intact. He left his phone, his wallet, his identification." "Sometimes people snap," Hoffman interrupted. "We've seen it before. Respectable individuals who just walk away from their lives." Over the following weeks, the investigation shifted focus. Instead of pursuing leads about the deleted files or the missing envelope, they explored Richard's mental health history, searched for signs of an affair, questioned whether he'd had a secret gambling problem. Catherine was outraged. "They're trying to destroy his reputation," she told her son Nathan during a tense conversation in their kitchen. "Your father didn't run away. He wouldn't abandon us. Something happened to him." Nathan Calloway was 29 years old, a junior attorney at a corporate law firm in New York. He'd always had a complicated relationship with his father. Richard was demanding, emotionally distant, more comfortable with legal precedents than family conversations. But Nathan knew one thing with absolute certainty. His father was not a quitter. "I'll figure this out," Nathan promised his mother. "I don't care how long it takes." 6 months after Richard's disappearance, the FBI officially closed the case. The final report concluded, "Insufficient evidence to determine cause of disappearance. Likely voluntary departure due to work-related stress and mental health crisis. Case suspended pending new evidence." Catherine refused to accept it. She hired private investigators. She contacted the media. She wrote letters to every member of Congress, demanding they reopen the investigation. But one by one, doors closed in her face. The media stopped returning her calls. Private investigators reported hitting dead ends, witnesses who suddenly refused to talk, documents that mysteriously went missing, officials who claimed attorney-client privilege or national security concerns. It was as if someone had erected an invisible wall around the truth. By 2005, Catherine's health began to fail. The years of fighting, the sleepless nights, the constant anxiety, they took their toll. She developed heart problems. Her memory started to slip. Nathan watched his mother fade, consumed by the mystery of what happened to his father. In 2012, Catherine Calloway died of congestive heart failure at age 71. Her last words to Nathan were, "Find him. Promise me you'll find out what happened." Nathan made that promise, but for the next decade, he had no idea where to start. The case was cold. The witnesses were gone or silent. The evidence had been buried or destroyed. Until one day in 2025, while cleaning out his father's old study, Nathan found something that changed everything. Hidden behind a loose panel in the wall, a place Nathan had never noticed in all his years growing up in that house, was a small metal lockbox. Inside were three things: a photograph, a USB drive, a handwritten note that read, "Nathan, if you're reading this, I'm either dead or in hiding. Trust no one in the Department of Justice. The rot goes deeper than you can imagine. Follow the money to Archway Holdings. That's where it all connects. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you while I was still there. I love you. Dad." Nathan stared at the note for a long time, his hands shaking. His father hadn't disappeared. He'd been forced to run. And now, 27 years later, Nathan was going to find out why. Part 3. The photograph. The photograph was old, printed on thick photo paper that had yellowed with age. It showed 5 people standing in front of an ornate building, the Department of Justice headquarters in Washington, D.C. Nathan recognized 2 of them immediately. Marcus Chen, the prosecutor who'd had dinner with his father the night he vanished Victor Harrington, the CEO who'd been convicted in the Dominion trial. The other 3 were unfamiliar. But on the back of the photo, in his father's handwriting, were 5 names with brief notes: Marcus Chen, Puppet Victor Harrington, Scapegoat Senator Thomas Wainwright, The Fixer, Diana Voss, DOJ Deputy Director, The Enforcer, Jonathan Kress, CEO Archway Holdings. The money below the names his father had written, taken at DOJ Annual Gala, April 1996, 2 years before they destroyed everything. Nathan stared at the photograph for hours, trying to piece together what it meant. His father had clearly been investigating something, a connection between these 5 people that went beyond their official roles. But what? He turned to the USB drive. It was old, the kind that hadn't been commonly used in over a decade. Nathan hoped it still worked. He plugged it into his laptop. A single folder appeared. Archway. Inside were hundreds of documents. Bank transfer records showing millions of dollars moving between shell companies, email exchanges between Marcus Chen and Diana Voss discussing problem judges and manageable outcomes, congressional voting records that lined up suspiciously with large donations from Archway Holdings, subsidiaries, internal DOJ memos about strategic prosecution priorities. And buried deep in the files was something that made Nathan's blood run cold. A memo dated September 1998, 1 month before his father disappeared, titled, "Callaway Problem, Action Required." The memo read, "Judge Callaway has become aware of inconsistencies in the Dominion prosecution. Chen reports that C is preparing to request internal investigation and possible dismissal of conviction. This cannot be allowed. Dominion verdict must stand to protect Archway's position in congressional banking negotiations. Recommend immediate intervention. Non-negotiable." It was signed, D.V. Diana Voss, Deputy Director of the Department of Justice. Nathan sat back in his chair, his mind reeling. His father hadn't disappeared because of stress or a breakdown. He'd been eliminated, removed from his position, because he'd discovered a conspiracy at the highest levels of government. But eliminated how? And was he dead? Or had he managed to escape? Nathan remembered the note. I'm either dead or in hiding. If his father was still alive somewhere, hiding for 27 years, why hadn't he contacted them? Why let his family suffer? Nathan spent the next 3 weeks verifying every document on the USB drive. He was a lawyer. He knew how to build a case. And he knew that if he was going to expose something this big, he needed to be absolutely certain of his facts. He hired a forensic accountant to trace the money flows. He contacted a former FBI agent who specialized in corruption cases. He reached out to investigative journalists who'd covered corporate fraud. Every single person confirmed the same thing. The documents were genuine. The conspiracy was real. But every single person also warned him, if you go public with this, you're putting a target on your back. These people don't play games. They eliminate threats. Nathan didn't care. His father had sacrificed everything to preserve the truth. The least Nathan could do was finish what his father started. He compiled everything into a comprehensive dossier. Bank records, emails, the DOJ memo, the photograph, his father's notes. And then he did something bold. He sent copies to every major news organization in America, along with a press release titled, "Federal Judge Didn't Disappear. He was erased by Department of Justice corruption ring." The response was immediate and terrifying. Within 24 hours, Nathan received a phone call from an unknown number. "Mr. Calloway," a calm, professional voice said, "this is Diana Voss. I believe you've been sharing some very irresponsible allegations about the Department of Justice." Nathan's heart pounded. "Those aren't allegations. They're documented facts." "Facts can be misinterpreted," Voss replied smoothly, "especially by someone grieving the loss of a parent. I understand you've been under tremendous stress." "Don't," Nathan interrupted. "Don't try to gaslight me. I have everything, the bank records, the emails, the memo with your signature ordering immediate intervention against my father." There was a long pause. "Mr. Calloway," Voss said, her voice dropping all pretense of friendliness, "you have no idea what you're dealing with. Your father made a choice, a foolish choice, to interfere with matters far beyond his understanding. If you continue down this path, you'll suffer the same consequences. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Drop this. Walk away, live your life, or—" Nathan hung up. His hands were shaking, but for the first time in 27 years, he felt like he was finally doing something that mattered. The media coverage exploded overnight. Son of missing judge claims government conspiracy. DOJ corruption scandal. Documents suggest systematic cover-up. Archway Holdings under investigation for political bribery. Congressional hearings were demanded. The FBI reopened the case. Journalists descended on everyone connected to the Dominion trial. Marcus Chen was found dead in his home 2 days after Nathan went public. Official cause, suicide by gunshot. But Nathan knew better. Senator Thomas Wainwright suddenly announced his retirement, citing health reasons. He fled to Switzerland the same day. Diana Voss was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. And Jonathan Kress, the CEO of Archway Holdings, the man his father had identified as the money, held a press conference denying all allegations and threatening lawsuits against Nathan and every news organization that reported the story. But then something happened that Nathan never expected. A package arrived at his apartment. No return address, no note. Inside was a burner phone with a single contact saved. Dad. Part 4. The Ghost Speaks. Nathan stared at the phone for 2 hours before he worked up the courage to call the number. It rang 4 times. Then a voice, older, rougher, but unmistakable, answered. "Hello, Nathan." Nathan's breath caught in his throat. "Dad? I didn't think you'd actually call," Richard Calloway said. "I hoped you would, but I wasn't sure you'd believe it was really me." "Where the hell are you?" Nathan demanded, emotions warring between relief, anger, and confusion. "Do you have any idea what the last 27 years have been like? Mom died thinking you abandoned us." "I know," Richard said quietly, "and that will haunt me for the rest of my life. But Nathan, I need you to understand. I didn't leave by choice. I left to protect you." "Protect me from what?" "From them. From the people I was investigating. If I'd stayed, they would have killed me. And then they would have gone after your mother. After you. They don't leave loose ends." Nathan sank onto his couch. "Tell me everything." Richard's story came out in fragments over the next hour. After that dinner with Marcus Chen, Richard had realized the scope of what he'd uncovered. The Dominion case wasn't just about one corporation. It was about a systematic network of corruption that reached into every level of government. Archway Holdings was at the center. They'd been using shell companies to funnel money to politicians, judges, and DOJ officials for over a decade. In return, those officials ensured that Archway's competitors were prosecuted, regulations were blocked, and anyone who threatened their operations was neutralized. Victor Harrington hadn't been guilty of the crimes he was convicted of, but he'd been guilty of something else, refusing to sell his company to Archway. So they'd manufactured evidence, used their puppet prosecutor, Marcus Chen, and put Harrington away for 60 years, eliminating the competition. Richard had planned to expose everything. But the night he left the restaurant, he'd been followed. He'd noticed the tail within blocks, a black SUV with government plates. He'd driven to the waterfront, left his car running to buy time, and called a contact he'd developed during his investigation, a former CIA operative who specialized in helping whistleblowers disappear. Within 3 hours, Richard Calloway ceased to exist. New identity, new location, complete severance from his old life. "I've been living in Nova Scotia for 27 years, Richard said, working as a fishing boat captain under the name Thomas Grant. I kept tabs on you and your mother from a distance. Every birthday, every achievement, every moment I missed. It killed me. But I couldn't risk contact. If they'd known I was alive, they'd have used you to flush me out." "Why come forward now?" Nathan asked. "Because you did what I never could," Richard said, emotion thick in his voice. "You exposed them. And now that it's public, now that the media is watching, it's harder for them to make people disappear. I can finally testify. I can finally finish what I started." Nathan felt tears streaming down his face. "What do you need from me?" "Protection, witness security, and a promise that you'll see this through, no matter what they try to do to stop us. I promise." Part 5. The Trial. 6 months later, the trial of the century began. United States versus Diana Voss, Jonathan Kress et al. Charges: conspiracy to obstruct justice, bribery of federal officials, witness tampering, abuse of power, and, thanks to Marcus Chen's death being reclassified as murder, conspiracy to commit homicide. Richard Calloway was the star witness. His testimony, backed by the documents he'd preserved, was devastating. He described the network in detail: names, dates, bank accounts. He explained how Archway systematically corrupted the judicial system. He revealed that at least 15 other federal cases had been manipulated in the same way. The defense tried to discredit him. They claimed he'd faked his own disappearance. They questioned his mental state. They suggested he was a disgruntled former judge seeking revenge. But the evidence was overwhelming. When Diana Voss took the stand, she maintained her innocence. But phone records showed she'd been in contact with the black SUV that followed Richard the night he disappeared. Financial records showed she'd received over $2 million from Archway subsidiaries over 10 years. Jonathan Kress never testified. His lawyers negotiated a plea deal, 15 years in exchange for full cooperation and disclosure of every official Archway had corrupted. The verdict came after 8 weeks of testimony, guilty on all counts. Diana Voss received 40 years in federal prison. 3 other DOJ officials received sentences ranging from 15 to 25 years. Senator Wainwright was extradited from Switzerland and sentenced to 20 years. Victor Harrington's conviction was overturned. He was released after serving 26 years for crimes he didn't commit. Epilogue. Justice. Delayed. 2 years after the trial, Nathan and Richard stood together at Catherine Calloway's grave. "I'm sorry I wasn't there," Richard said quietly. "For her, for you, for all the moments I missed." Nathan was silent for a long time. Then, "I understand why you did it, but understanding doesn't make it hurt less." "I know." They stood in the cemetery as the sun set, 2 men connected by blood and trauma, and a shared belief that some things, like truth, like justice, were worth any sacrifice. Richard had been pardoned for his disappearance. The government had even offered him a consulting position helping to root out remaining corruption in the federal judiciary. He'd declined. After 27 years as Thomas Grant, fishing boat captain, he'd discovered he preferred the simplicity of the ocean to the complexity of the law. Nathan had left corporate law. He'd founded a nonprofit, the Calloway Foundation, dedicated to defending whistleblowers and exposing judicial corruption. "Do you think it made a difference?" Nathan asked. "Everything we went through?" Richard considered the question. "The system is still broken. There are still corrupt officials, still powerful people manipulating justice for profit. But we proved something important. The truth can survive, even when they try to bury it, even when they try to erase everyone who knows it. Eventually, the truth finds a way." He placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Your mother would be proud of you." Nathan nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. As they walked back toward the parking lot, Richard's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then showed Nathan the screen. It was a news alert. 3 more judges under investigation following Callaway case revelations. "It's not over," Richard said. "No," Nathan agreed. "But we started something that can't be stopped." They drove away from the cemetery together, father and son, united at last in the fight for a justice system worthy of the ideals it claimed to represent. The ghost had spoken. The system had listened. And somewhere in America, in courtrooms and congressional offices and corporate boardrooms, people who thought they were untouchable were starting to understand. Justice may be slow. It may be corrupted. It may be delayed for decades. But it never truly disappears. The end author's note. This story is fictional but inspired by real concerns about corruption in American institutions. While the characters and specific events are invented, the underlying themes, the potential for abuse of power, the courage required to expose wrongdoing, and the personal cost of standing up for truth, reflect genuine challenges in modern democratic systems. The story reminds us that institutions are only as strong as the people who operate them, and that vigilance, courage, and commitment to truth are essential to preventing the kind of systematic corruption depicted here. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to join us in exploring more untold stories about justice, power, and the individuals who dare to challenge corrupt systems. Thank you for watching.